Okay, so it's Sunday morning and it's the 30th of September and we're sort of almost 1 month into spring, and it's been a bit slow to get going here in southwest of Western Australia. The weather's been quite cool, but we've had a few warm days, and now I've got my first swarm. So I suspect this one's most probably come from one of the hives I've got in the backyard, and it's a reasonable size. I suspect it swarmed most probably about an hour or so ago, and they're just starting to settle down and cluster and move up underneath the branches of the little shrub there. So I'm just going to leave them for a little while and see. Hold on, let me just come around here. So the queen's obviously landed on this bush and she's settled down. Now the bees will sort of cluster all over the place to start with, but then as they sort of settle and figure out where the queen is, they'll move up and they'll move around and they'll tightly cluster around her. And so I suspect she's up there somewhere, up underneath that the leaves there where it's a little bit shady. And there were more bees down here on this branch, but they're slowly moving up and going up and clustering there. So they must probably hang here for maybe a couple of days if I did nothing, and they'll send scout bees out, find somewhere that's more suitable, a hollow log or hopefully not someone's chimney, and then they'll move in. The scouts will come back, tell the cluster where the new hive location is using a waggle dance, get the bees agitated, and then they'll take flight and they'll all swarm off to the new home. So what I'm going to do is just let them settle for a little minute. Yeah, they're starting to cluster nicely, and it's a reasonably good size swarm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them straight into a 10 frame box. If it was a smaller swarm, I'd most probably put them into a 5 frame nuke box, because you don't want them to have too much space to start with until they get established. So we'll just let them settle for maybe 15 minutes. I'll bring a box over. So each swarm's different, how you manage it and how you get it in the box. Sometimes you can break the branch off and shake them into the box. This one's actually quite close to the ground. So what I'm thinking of doing is I might just bring the box over here and tuck it up right close to the ground, because they are touching the ground. And I'm going to see if I can get these bees to march in, because once they know the box is really close, and the first lot of bees start to march in, they'll all start to march in and the queen will follow. Now I've set up a box and it's just over there in the shade, and I've actually got a few scout bees that are actually just flying over from here, and they're going over to check it out. So they can smell the frames of comb in there, and they're most probably going, this is actually not a bad place. So what I might do is bring that box over here and just see how it goes, and hopefully we can get them to march in. Move you a bit closer. Oh, and I think here we go. So I think they're marching in. Oh, beautiful. I could have shaked them into the box, but you know, it gets a bit messy. And a lot of the bees tend to take flight, and it's because this cluster's so close to the ground, it would have most probably just shaken bees everywhere. But oh, look at them go. Oh, beautiful. They're marching in. How gorgeous is that? So you can see the bees up on the cluster there. They're all starting to move down. How awesome. That is textbook swarm collecting. And the march is on the way. And God, how quickly do they let the others know, oh my God, there's a home here. Let's move in. Uh-oh, I'm not too sure. They're starting to come out again. I'm a little bit worried that they're about to swarm and take off, and they're not going in the box anymore. They seem to be coming out of the box. So I'm not too sure. I'll just have to watch for a little bit more. Because there are a few bees, they are getting a bit agitated and they are starting to take flight a bit. And they should be just marching in the box. So I'm not too sure whether I should scoop these girls into the box and risk them swarming and I'll lose them. I'm not convinced they're going in. Okay, so slight change of plans. Where I originally set the box up, it looked as though they were going to march in, but then the cluster seemed to look as though they were getting a bit agitated and there was bees starting to take flight. And the bees that were in the box started to come back out. So I was a bit worried that maybe the swarm was going to take flight and I was going to lose the queen. So I decided to move the box a bit more underneath the bush, shake the top branches into the box, and then I just got some handfuls of bees and scooped them into the box as well, because I thought I'm just going to try and get the queen in the box and then hopefully they'll settle down and then march in. So I've got most of the cluster in the box, and so I'm just going to sit and watch it for just a minute and just see whether the rest of the bees start to go into the box, because that is a good indication then that I've got the queen. What I also did just to settle them down was to use a little bit of sugar water. It just quietens them down. You can see that's just sort of settled them a little bit, and it just stops them getting too agitated, because it is a little bit warm, so I was a bit worried they were going to all just suddenly take flight and swarm off somewhere else and I was going to lose them. So it looks as though they're starting to settle again now, and it looks as though they are starting to go into the box. So it's a case of just trying a strategy and then sit back and just watch and see what the bees do. But they look as though they've settled, because I've sort of disrupted their sense of swarming, and you can see the ones that are really got their abdomens bent down and they're giving off the pheromone, and they all seem to be clustering around the box, and you can see that they are going into the box. So I'm hopeful that I've somewhere or another shook the queen into the box, that she's happy to stay in there and doesn't suddenly come out, because that's the thing, queens decide, you know, they can decide if they don't like a box. Just because you put them in a box doesn't mean to say they stay in the box. Okay, I'm just coming back to check on this hive. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, so these girls have had about 4 or 5 hours to settle into this box now, and as you can see, it's all gone really well. So they've all gone in the box. There's a couple of bees just there on the landing board that are fanning. Everyone else is in the box. The bees are just milling around. There's a few still orientating, and I've noticed that there's quite a few foragers leaving the landing board and heading straight out in a beeline off to get nectar and pollen and bring that back. So it looks as though this was a 100% success. They seem to be quite happy in their new home. And so what I'll do is I'll wait until it's dark and they're all back in the box, and then I'll strap this up and I'll move it to a slightly better location. It's a little bit close to the front verge, and when the retic comes on they're going to get a bit wet, so we'll move them to a better spot, and hopefully they'll build up their numbers and we'll start getting some honey from them towards the middle or end of summer. So it was that simple. Got the bees in the box and we have another colony.